Hey everyone, Jack Jostes here. I just finished speaking at Growin in North Carolina about recruiting. And I'm here with our Director of Client Strategy, Robert Felton, and our Sales and Marketing Manager, Jamie DuBose. And we're gonna talk with you about some ideas to help you proactively recruit and retain hell yes employees.
What would you say is the ideal response time for a company if they are in the process of recruiting?
So ideally, they would automate a response that goes out right away, just like you would with a potential customer. When they fill out the form on your website, same day would be best. Within 24 hours would be good.
Landscapers are so good at solving problems. Like when there's the big problem, they get in there, they get their hands dirty, and they solve the problem. But when I talk to them about marketing and sales and recruitment is commonly one of the biggest issues in their business.
You know, if the pay was exactly the same, why would somebody come and work for you? And you need to have an answer to that.
The three questions when you are interviewing your employees is like, where were you before? Where are you now? And where do you want to be in the future? Jack, Robert, it is so good to be with you guys in North Carolina at the Green and Growin show. How's the show been for you so far, Jack?
It's been really good. You know, I presented this morning, really nice room. It's been fun.
I think that was the biggest room and biggest audience, maybe, besides the TNLA show years ago, right? I don't know. Have we had a bigger show?
That's a great question. I guess it was one of the biggest audiences I've presented to. There were 182 people in the audience.
I counted 189.
Okay, 189 to 182, somewhere in between there. No, that was good. I think there were 500 people the last time we were all together in Texas for Dan Kennedy's Magnetic Marketing Super Conference. So that was actually, I think, the biggest audience, but this was, as far as a landscape event, this was up there. So it was a good room.
I need to print more papers next time. So
Yeah, we have to up our print numbers gonna go up.
Well, and so one of the things that we did that we talk about with our clients that's relevant is we did postcard marketing ahead of the event. So there was a good turnout at the show altogether, but part of what you need to do is market your talk. And one of the ways we did that was through social media, email, calls, and direct mail. So tying it back to our audience and what they do, if you're ever speaking or sponsoring something, I always look at these events as one of many things for marketing. And that's a theme that we're working on with our own clients.
So recruiting is a really hot topic now and something that we've heard over and over again as a common problem in the landscape industry. What are your thoughts on that, Jack?
Well, so I've been working in this space for around 16 years. I mean, the last 8 years have been focused on snow and landscape, but even before that, we had a lot of landscape clients. And recruiting has always been and will always be an issue, but I think where we're at, it's 2025. And, you know, it was interesting in 2018, 2019, clients were they needed leads, and then COVID happened and they had so many leads and they had so much business and they didn't have enough people. And then last year, I feel like demand was down and some people were even overstaffed. But then there's still the problem that businesses are having trouble recruiting. And one of the things here in North Carolina that's happening, unfortunately, is the hurricane cleanup. And so some people are having to rebuild many things, not just their landscape. And just today I was talking to a guy, Thomas, who shared that in his market, and he has 70 to 100 employees during his peak season. They do a lot of design build, they do maintenance also, but he said that the challenge he's facing is in the pool of construction workers in the area, many people are getting pulled away from landscape construction and into, he shared an example of like, his pay rate might be 25 an hour, but the cabinetry builder might be able to pay 30 an hour. And so he's competing not even just with landscape construction companies, but also just other construction companies.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it sounds like not only are you competing with other landscape companies, now you have to look at it from a bigger picture perspective, which makes recruiting and SEO and all of those things even more important. Yeah.
I think we've seen that before too. I mean, we talked to a lot of clients down in like Louisiana, competing against some of the oil fields, things like that, but really being transparent and really showing the differences and really explaining how a career can be made in this industry, I think is really important. And I think you did a good job talking about that at your talk, the career path showing. We're here. A lot of people had to attend to get continuing education. So I think there's some unique things, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, yeah, so that was one of the things. We brought a guy, Clark, up on stage.
His name is Chuck.
One of the things we did was we brought a guy. We should just leave that in because, all right, one of the challenges of doing these shows, and I do appreciate Chuck.
Yes.
Sorry, Chuck, I love
Chuck
you.
Barber.
If you're out there listening, we sent you a grill.
We did.
We had a great chat about barbecue. He's smoking meats. He's cool. So, not Clark,
Not Clark.
but Chuck. Anyway, so we brought Chuck up on stage. And, Chuck was talking about career path and how his Hell Yes employee is somebody that works hard, they show up on time, they want to work, and they want to grow into a foreman or something like that. And I think that a lot of times landscape professionals they're so focused on getting field workers or field staff or those entry-level positions, but they forget to communicate this is where you start, and you could grow into this role or that role. So that was one of the key points in my talk, was communicating career path in your recruiting ads, in your careers landing pages. And then one of the best ways to do that is to have interviews with people who have gone through the ranks and have been promoted. So we shared some interviews and even questions to ask your employees on video.
So one of the things that stood out to me in your talk was speed matters. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and how people can interpret that when they're looking at recruiting?
Well, I'll start with a sad story, which is we're recruiting right now because we're growing at Ramblin Jackson, and we need to add another account coordinator. And so we started the recruiting process. We get a lot of applicants. We send out a skills assessment. We have an initial interview. I needed to watch that. And we had somebody who got through there, and I was slow because I have this kitchen problem. I need to hire, speaking of kitchen cabinetry,
Right.
carpenters.
It's all coming together now.
Unfortunately, I need to hire one because my kitchen flooded shortly before Christmas. So anyways, I've been distracted with personal life stuff and slower than usual. And that's wonderful, Jack, but I've already accepted a job somewhere else. By the time we got to the next step, it was too late. So I wanted to share that story because I think in the peak season, in landscape season, if you're trying to hire people, you're going to be under similar stress. You're going to have your kitchen is probably going to break during the springtime, and it's peak season, and you've got sales to do and people to take care of. So having a way that you can automate it was my tip. And one of the partners one of the software companies that we partner with at Ramblin Jackson is Team Engine, because they have a whole applicant process through their software where you can text message people. So that was the thing that speed matters. As soon as somebody applies to your position, Team Engine can automate a text message to them like, hey, thanks for applying for our field labor position. Tell me more about why you applied. Just prompting them to they responded, and now you're having a conversation. And that speed is what increases your chance of them showing up to interview with you, getting an offer to them. And if you're slow, you're going to lose.
So, Jack, what would you say is the ideal response time for a company if they are in the process of recruiting?
So ideally, they would automate a response that goes out right away, just like you would with a potential customer. When they fill out the form on your website, sending an automatic response to them helps them understand which landscape company they contacted. Because think about it, it's very similar to recruiting. If people are on the hunt for a job, they're looking probably at dozens of companies. They all kind of start to blur into each other, like which company did I apply to? So having an email, and in this case, I'm definitely recommending a text message go out to them that's like, thanks for applying to Jack's Landscapes for our field position. Tell me more about why you applied. And now my brand is in there, and I'm in their text message history, right? So ideally that would go out, and then a personal response. I wrote in our assessment under 12 hours, same day would be best. Within 24 hours would be good. But many landscape companies are taking like days
Yeah.
to respond at all. And if you think about it, somebody might already have a job before then because you're competing with all of these other companies that are trying to find these people. So if you find somebody who applies, you got to get back to them quickly.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved too is like meeting your future employees where they're at in terms of the fact that they might be on their phone more than their computer, or they might be bilingual and, you know, appreciate instructions in Spanish or something like that. So I think you made a lot of really great points about that as you were kind of sharing how to kind of make recruiting not only easier for us or as a company, but also for the person who's looking for their job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did talk about having bilingual, like if they speak Spanish, and Team Engine can help you translate that. So you're texting with them in Spanish and it can help translate it for you.
Robert, you talk to a lot of landscapers all day long. And one of the things that Jack mentioned in his talk was kind of this idea of when you're looking at recruiting, there's different departments that might have a role to play in that, but sometimes it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is saying and vice versa. So what have you seen as one of the biggest problems when it comes to recruiting that you've talked to?
Well, I think it's kind of funny because landscapers are so good at solving problems. Like when there's the big problem, they get in there, they get their hands dirty, and they solve the problem. But when I talk to them about marketing and sales and recruitment is commonly one of the biggest issues in their business. They can't find the work, they can't find the employees, they're stressed out. And then when I ask what they're doing about it, they say, oh, I have a marketing person, or a marketing person's doing it, or I hired this part-time HR person. I was like, if it's the biggest problem in your business, you need to invest in solving that problem. So a lot of landscapers need to take the time, look at it, and if they spend the time to respond quicker, to set up the processes, the automation, they can solve this problem. But it seems like something that, they're good at building stuff, and this seems like something they want to avoid. So they usually hire someone, and then that person hires someone, and then maybe there's a consultant. But instead, it's about all of them talking to each other and making sure they're on the same page. It's the same as sales process, the recruiting process. You need to know what's going to happen, how to do it, who your ideal employee is. You need to talk about it, write it down, have it on paper. Otherwise, that problem is just going to keep feeling bigger and bigger. But if you write it down, you invest some time, you invest some energy, you can solve this problem. And I know clients who have.
So it's not just as easy and as an Indeed job ad?
No, you can't just kind of pass it off. And I know that's kind of how it used to be. So I think it's a hard change and a new reality. And I think that's sometimes the hardest thing is now you got to do a little bit more work to do something that you didn't have to do before. And that is always frustrating. That's part of human nature.
Yeah. So if it's your biggest problem, then put your efforts and your energy towards that and invest in getting it off of your plate as a problem with A players.
Jack mentioned automation. There's so much just easy automation that you can put in place. So it's kind of like if you sit down, you build the process, it's going to be easier in the future, and that problem will stop growing and being so big and overwhelming. So invest some time, build some process. If you get Jack's worksheet, and it's all good stuff. Just like you need to talk to each other. You need to be able to invest in solving this problem. So
I love that. So Jack, if I am a landscape company business owner and I have this problem that Robert's talking about, what are the top 3 questions I should ask myself to get myself on the path to doing a better job at recruiting? Where do I start?
Well, the first question to answer is, why should somebody work for you over any other landscape contractor or cabinetry builder or any other competing construction company in the area? And many landscape companies don't really have an answer to that. I polled the audience today and they started telling me things like, well, we've been in business for 40 years. Well, you and 5 other companies that are competing for the same employee. So
we work outside.
One person said, because we work outside with plants. And that is something that your Hell Yes employee would care about. But if I like working outside with plants and there's 5 family-owned companies that have been in business for 40 years, what really actually makes you different from them? And let's pretend you're within 5% of each other on pay. Let's pretend the pay was the same.
Yeah.
If the pay was exactly the same, why would somebody come and work for you? And you need to have an answer to that. And the good news is companies already do have an answer to that. It's part of who you are. They just haven't thought about how to communicate it. So that's where we help in marketing, is helping people figure out, well, why do people work for you? And one of the best ways to do that is to interview your employees, so they're saying it. And we shared some testimonials in English and in Spanish of Hell Yes employees from our clients. I think you said, what are some of the other questions?
Yeah, I said top 3 questions, but you can what advice would you give to a landscape company who wants to solve their recruiting problem? So find out what's in it for them, like the employee.
Yeah.
And what do I do next?
Well, then you need to write a landing page, like a careers page, and your recruiting pages, your job post pages need to be excellent. I have reviewed thousands of them, and they are mostly bad. They are mostly bad, and what I mean by that is
They're so bad.
they're so bad. Like, I read one recently that still had like a COVID vaccine requirement. And it's like, hey guys, it is 2025. Like, have you read this? Have you personally read this? That's where I would start, is, have you read this?
Read your own
Have you read?
Yeah.
And I have to share as a business owner that sometimes I read stuff of mine that I'm like, wow, this is out of date, and it's bad, and it's missing really great things that we're doing. So it's a lot of like keeping basic stuff, like keeping your ads current, keeping them persuasive, and listing out all of the benefits and perks that you have. To Robert's point of the business owner, one time I was with one of our clients, and he said, "Oh, we can't hire anyone. I've been trying for this." They needed a construction foreman. And I asked, well, what benefits do you offer, that sort of thing? And he's like, oh, we've got vision and dental, retirement, paid vacation. And he's rattling this like really nice list of benefits. And I'm like, why isn't this on your, job advertising? And he's like, well, I don't know. We have an HR lady who does that. And so the HR lady is pointing at they had somebody else who built their website. And right?
Yeah. Again, the left hand and the right hand are
So I think getting some of the basics out there makes you stand out, because the bar is really low, frankly, for landscape job ads. So when you have a like even decent job description, you stand out. And then communicating pay ranges. And looking at pay ranges, like what else can you do? I think in Colorado the minimum wage is $18.80 an hour now. Yeah, it's $18.80 an hour. So, I mean, I was reviewing someone's job ad, and it had, $19 an hour and required 4 years of experience in landscaping. And it's like, who gets paid that has 4 years of experience when you could go work at Chuck E. Cheese at an entry level?
Do they still have Chuck E. Cheese?
I don't know.
I hope so.
I saw one.
Childhood memory.
I was somewhere recently where they had a Chuck E. Cheese. But my point is being aware of what else is out there, and it's frustrating, honestly, because you think you're doing well and you're paying a fair rate or whatever, and then you look online and you realize you're way off. So I don't know. There's a lot there, but essentially getting clear on who do you want to hire, why would they work for you, and putting out compelling ads for that.
It's so easy to get caught up too and frustrated when you're listening to a presentation, you hear benefits. And I think Jack made a really good point today. Is like, at one point, he couldn't really offer some of those benefits, but I loved rock climbing, and Jack offered a free rock climbing membership. And that allowed me to drive to Boulder early, shower, rock climb, do things. So I think getting a little more creative of what is a benefit is important here. I mean, we review a lot of marketing, and we help clients come up with these, and sometimes they don't have a bunch of fancy benefits and health and insurance and all this stuff. But what they do have is, I have a client, they never work weekends. They work 4/10s, so you can spend more time with your family. So really thinking about what is a benefit, how do you talk about it? And I bet you can find them. You just need to sit down and really think about it, but don't get caught up on the word benefit. Get caught up on what do you do that's different than other people. Don't have to work in the snow. We've marketed that before, like weekend work. So just don't get hung up on the word benefit. Think creatively about what that could be and what you can offer today.
That's great advice.
I really like that, because it's hard to get to the point where your business can offer. I'm sure people listening have had this experience. I remember like 8 years ago, I was interviewing somebody for a sales position, and their base salary was greater than my total personal income as the owner of the company. And I was like, and this guy was like, you want to pay me? And I'm like, you make that as your base salary? And I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should do that or something. And I was years away of being anywhere close to paying what this person needed to make. And that goes back to that was awkward for him, and it was totally awkward for me. And had I put what was at my actual salary range in the job ad, he probably never would have even applied, and that would have saved us both that embarrassment. So yeah, to Robert's point, you have to, I don't know, it's also what's really exciting about the landscape industry and business in general is like you keep getting better, and like you have to start somewhere, and you probably are doing something really well that someone would be like, cool, I want that. But if you don't tell them about it, then they won't even apply.
So one thing that brings up for me as an employee of Ramblin Jackson, and you kind of touched on it on your talk as well, is the 3 questions when you are interviewing your employees is like, where were you before? Where are you now? And where do you want to be in the future? And I think that is also something that is missed a lot, especially in job. I know it was something that I was looking for when I was looking for a job. It's like, I don't want to know what I can do this week but what is your vision for the future for this role?
Yeah, I think, talking about that career path with people, and sometimes you may not have an exact definition of it, or I don't know, like your role has evolved.
Yeah, mine's probably not the greatest example.
but it is though, I think, because many of our clients are small businesses too, and I think a lot of career path in my mind happens a bit organically with the people who are collaborating on, you mentioned the vision of like, hey, here's how we're trying to go. How can you help me get there?
But I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't shared that. So
the way that I shared that, I actually sent you a video about the vision of the company. I was like, hey, before we have our like final conversation, here's where we're going. What was that like for you?
I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is like we're going way off script.
2 years, no,
about a year and a half.
Yeah, so a year and a half.
That I really appreciated that. Man, this might have to be a 2-parter too. No, I really appreciated that because it showed me that you cared enough about the role you were hiring for to let, whether it was me or anybody else, know what was coming next. So I appreciated the kind of look into Ramblin Jackson before I even was an employee, and that meant a lot to me, and it made me want to have the final interview even more because like all the boxes were checked. I was like, yes, this is a good decision. I want to take the next step. So instead of you like pushing me towards the next step, you were like, here, this is where we're going. Do you want to come along for the ride? I was like, hell yeah. So
cool. Well, so I had just read the book Vivid Vision.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's a really short book, but it's basically about communicating a vision of the company. And I just went and saw, a lot of business books are all the same. Right. Wayne, our business coach, told me that.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap.
Yeah.
They're all like, you got to set a vision and have core values, but you really do need to do those things is the secret. So I just saw Bill and Ed from the Harvest Group. They're harvesters. I think it's the Harvest Group,
they're the
right?
Harvesters.
They're
from the Harvest Group. Yep.
But they were talking about one of the key roles in leadership in relation to this topic of recruiting and retention is communicating the vision. And so the way I like to do that, we use EOS at Ramblin Jackson, and I basically make a video about it of like, hey, here's where I see us heading in 3 years and how I see us getting there. And then I invite people to talk about it. And I think sometimes if you don't communicate that to people, they're not going to think about, they'll have no idea what's in your head.
Yeah.
So what does lakes have to do with it?
Well, let me tell you. So Chuck came on stage. Actually, before Chuck came on stage, he was telling me that one of his challenges is employees who are like on their phone at work and they're like Instagramming and TikToking and whatever. So he said that he has thrown phones in the lake was the first thing he said about lakes. But then the second thing, I brought him up on stage and we talked about how to recruit people and how do you know when you have an A player. And he said, well, I throw them in the lake. And if they can figure it out, or if they can't figure it out, but they want to figure it out and they ask for help, I know that I have an ideal employee, and if they just struggle and get out, then they're not a fit. And I partly agree with that. I mean, I think you do need to like give people hard things to do and see if they have grit and can figure it out. I also think you need to train people. And I know that one of the reasons many people quit landscape jobs is because they're embarrassed that they don't have the skills. So this was something that one of my employees told me in particular about her Spanish-speaking employees. And so she created Pleasant Landscapes University, and it's like she has this career path to help people. So that's what the lakes thing was about at this show.
I'm glad you cleared that up, because anybody who watches the replay or sees glimpses of your talk might have the same question. So thank you for clarifying. Jack, tell me about your ABRs.
Well, Jamie, the ABRs is for always be recruiting. Yeah. So we had Andrew Hardison, who's from North Carolina, and he spoke at the Landscaper Summit a couple years ago. And in his talk, he talked about the ABLs, always be learning. So
Love that.
anyways, we're borrowing Andrew's joke, but the point is that you want to always be recruiting. And so one of the things that I do at Ramblin Jackson is even when I'm not recruiting, I always have buttons and links to some of our top positions, and I get applicants. And that's one of the ways I'm kind of passively recruiting. But I know that many people in the landscape industry keep conversations going with people on whether it's through LinkedIn or email or text, like just, hey, how are you doing? And that way you kind of have those relationships nurturing along. So when a position opens, you're not starting from zero.
Very cool.
I want to add something. I also think it's important in ABR to always be recruiting and talking to some of your best employees. I mean, I can't tell you how many landscapers I talk to where they get a majority of their employees from friends and family of their best employees. So, I mean, if you don't create that culture, those employees might not know that their friend who works just as hard as they could be a great opportunity. So, keeping that culture, that door open, talking about how you're always looking for the best people, great people is important, because your team needs to hear it and they need to know it. And you can even make that a little bit better by offering some incentives for them bringing in and getting referrals. But I think it's important to create that culture. So not only you know that and LinkedIn and all of that happens, but also your team completely understands that you're always looking for better people to grow and be a better company, and that you're always growing.
That is such good advice. I love that. Thank you.
Cool. Well, speaking of recruiting, I've got some actual applicants I've got to go reply to for another position. So we're going to wrap it up. And if you want to learn more about recruiting and how to do it, we will review your recruiting with you. And we can make a video, we can review your job ads, and we actually help people with employer branding, writing job ads, making employee videos, all these different things. So check it out at ramblinjackson.com/recruiting. And see our show notes for that. And thank you both for rambling.
Yeah,
and
this
for
was fun.
coming on the road. This has been fun. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, make sure you click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly sales, marketing, and leadership inspiration to grow your snow and landscape company. I'm Jack Jostes, and I'll see you in the next video.
I was about to say Jack and Robert, but it's Jack and Robert. Okay.
Yeah.
Jack. I'm sorry. I'll get there.
No, it's
Let me
good.
get there.
It's
I'll
good.
get there.
Can I add something?
No. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you can't.